Okay, I have a question for all of you. How many of you know about the animation industry and what opportunities are there? Anyone? Put your hands up. If you don't, it's fine. I'll ask Swani. No one? Okay.
Okay, so that's fine. So basically, animation is the cartoons you see on TV and in movies. We're not talking about visual effects movies like Avatar, but we're talking about things like Scooby Doo, which I am assuming all of us have seen. We're talking about The Simpsons, which is animation for adults. Animation in India is huge. I think in 2021 it was a 3,000 crore rupee business, and it's expected to double by 2024. So this means that there are tons of opportunities for content, especially with the OTT platforms like Netflix and all coming up. There's a huge demand for Indian content. And what I'd really like to see is, so far in India, animation has been slightly simplistic storytelling, but the way the Japanese have their anime and these are huge movies. I kind of feel that if we can do something which is Indian storytelling with Indian art, the sort of stories only we can do, I think that would be amazing to see next. Now, just very briefly, what I do is animation has a lot of opportunities for work. You can be a director, like a film director. You can be an artist, which means that you actually draw the characters. Or you can be an animator, which means you make them move. What I do is I'm a scriptwriter, which means I come up with an idea, I think of the characters, I think of the world. I pitch the idea to a network like Netflix, and if I'm lucky, they greenlight the idea. And then we finally write the script. And a script is basically a story with action and dialogue. So that's what I do. And actually, I wanted to ask you, because you have done so much amazing stuff, that, what has been your journey to becoming a writer?
I have another question for you all.
Oh my God.
How many of you were clueless or are clueless about what you want to do in life? So many. I'm so happy. Because I was in the same space. I think I knew what I didn't want to do. And the biggest thing over there was maths. Nothing more. So what I did was, and I think this is something everyone should actually do, because you then discover many things and you learn along the way. So when I started, I did psychology. I did my major in that. I thought I'd take a PhD, become doctor in psychology and all that. Then I realized there was a lot of rote learning if you want to do a PhD or anything else. Too many studies, too many people, scientists who have done that to remember. So then I decided I'll do animation. So because I had, I could sketch. That's all. That's about it. Okay, I could sketch. 1 year of animation, and I realized I don't like to draw so much as write stories. फिर भी मेरी घंटी नहीं बजी. So after that, I went ahead and did 3D Maya, because 1 year had not taught me that animation is not for me. Then after that, I looked for a job, but I'm not passionate enough, right? So it took me time, and finally I decided, okay, let me look for something else. What do I like to do? I like to write. And I've been writing in my school days, vagera, but it didn't occur to me as a career option. Because our parents don't really tell you, na, bade okay, writer ban jao. So what I did next was a copywriting job. वो 2 महीने किया. So what happened is, during this time, when I tried different things, I realized finally when I went where I needed to be, they all came into play. So for example, psychology taught me about human nature, how we think. So we had this college mein, whenever we had these practicals, people used to think that we hypnotize people, because that's what psychology students do. We do not. Yeah, हम लोग बहुत powerful होते तब. So we don't hypnotize people, but what we do is we understand how the human mind thinks, and you start looking into that. You observe, you're curious about that. Copywriting taught me about brevity. In short words, minimum number of words, how can you hook your audience and convey an idea to them? After copywriting, because वहाँ पे भी नहीं जमा मेरा, 2 महीने हो गए, then I applied for this newspaper. It's a children's newspaper, Navneet's News House. It used to be there some years ago. So I was a sub-editor there. While I was there, I did a journalism course, because I also realized in schools and colleges, when we write essays, we are actually encouraged to use a lot of jargon, a lot of big words. Technically, when you're talking to the common person, you should not be using jargon. You should be talking in simpler language, active voice, shorter sentences. So journalism taught me that. Then after that, I realized that I liked writing stories. After doing a lot of news pieces, it took me 4 years of hunting to finally get to Tinkle. So that is how I landed up being a writer. It took me a very, very long time, but it was a very interesting route because yeah, even animation, it teaches you to think visually. Most of us don't realize this, but writing for animation, writing for films, as Svani will tell you in detail, it's very different from writing for any other format. You can't, if you look at a film and you look at the opening scene, that's not how you'd write a book. It's basically based on visual impact. So that is what happened for me. And after I quit Tinkle about 2 years ago, I decided I wanted to try many more things because I believe that you shouldn't only do one thing in your life. So I did a course in game writing, in screenwriting, content marketing. Basically, I had a blast. And I'm also writing novels. I should call them books because they're not published yet. So young adult fantasy fiction. So that's what I do right now. So that is how I became a writer.
She's really underselling herself right now. Her novel is an epic fantasy and it is epic when you read it. So please don't sell yourself.
Thanks, Shirley. Okay. By the way, I'm done with mine, but you have had a very super interesting journey as well. So, CSA screenwriter, tell us.
So, I think when I was a child, I think I was much smarter because at that time I knew I wanted to be a writer. And in fact, recently my mom found my old diary where I had written when I was in 3rd grade saying I want to grow up and I want to be a children's writer. Then life happened, I decided I was much smarter than that and I want to do something in finance. So I did my CA and I remember I was auditing a company, I will not talk about which company. I was auditing a company and I realized that in the margins of my Excel sheet, I was actually writing poetry. And very bad poetry, but I was writing poetry. And that it was so clear then that I was not in the right field anymore. And I had given like 4-5 years to CA by then. I was in my final year. And but I decided I want to change fields now. And luckily, my family is extremely supportive. They're here being supportive today as well. And I was also very lucky. I got an internship in an animation studio in Mumbai. So this was an unpaid internship. Thank you so much. This was an unpaid internship, but what it really teaches you on the job is, you learn copywriting, you learn pitching, you learn how to meet deadlines, and you also learn how to be rejected. When your creative work is rejected, it's a very bad feeling. But the more it happens, the more you kind of learn and get better and better. So what both of us, I think, have done at various points in time is, so for example, Warner Brothers and Disney and Nickelodeon all have fellowships, and they give you a list of books that you can study to enter those fellowships. So maybe from India, you may not be able to enter the fellowship, but you can certainly get a hold of those books and learn and apply them in the work that you're doing. So I kept doing that, and it was really a blast because I think both of us just love what we do so much that it was great to learn and it was great to keep trying to get better. So yeah, I feel very lucky to be doing what I do now.
I still can't get over the fact that you were rank holder CA.
Basically, I'm a fattu. I need to study very hard. So, but I mean, I think with both of us, it's so clear that when you're a writer, when you're starting out in life, you have no idea that the path is going to be so confusing and so non-linear. So I have a really weird question. If you had to tell your 20 or 18-year-old self, this is what lies ahead, what would you tell them?
Okay, I have another question for y'all then. How do y'all react to failure or mistakes? Anyone? What is your normal reaction to failure or mistakes?
It's okay if your answer is I cry. That's absolutely fine.
So the thing is, when I was younger, a failure or mistake was like, oh my God, kya kiya? Because I think most of us react to failure that way because we are always told we have to be perfect. I think we need to be trained in another manner, kind of like, when you do long division, any kind of division, and it's a very big number. You have to sort of guesstimate what number you want to divide it by, right? And if you wrongly guesstimate, you don't go, oh no, what did I do? It's normal, you're expected to experiment. And if it's not, you correct it, course correct, basically. That's the same way I think Google Maps also works. It kind of guesstimates where you need to reach, especially if it's a remote kind of region. And sometimes there are stories where you land up in a pond or things like that, right? So you don't tell Google Maps that you had to be perfect. I think that is one of the biggest things. Failure and mistakes are a given. So when you set out, if you realize that that's what's going to happen, you go with the flow and you just decide course correct karna hai. Nothing more than that. So no one has to tell you you're not good enough or blah. You just do that. And I wish someone had told me that when I was a kid, because most of I think our entire culture is built around the fact that marks itne score karne hain, you have to be the best. Mera beta, meri beti, the thoda minor brag that happens. So I wish that was not the case then. So that was one advice I'd give myself when I was younger. And another question I have is, since no one is talking, I'm anyway asking this question. What are your dreams? Does anyone have dreams? I mean, y'all are all creative arts students. Many of y'all, I imagine. I'm sure y'all have dreams.
Someone has an answer.
कोई तो dream होगा यार.
Please.
हाँ.
Use my creativity to the best in any field that I
Yeah.
Lovely.
to
Nice.
have something established that I have done.
Right. Anyone else?
Make something creative that in just a click your audience is like, oh, this is different. I can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so making something more creative and more attractive that in one click the audience is like, oh, this is different.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Nice. Anyone else? It's okay if you all don't have answers. I still go ahead. Okay. I believe.
I think someone here has an answer.
Someone here?
Okay. No.
Okay. You know that very common slang thingy that we all say, YOLO? I don't think we actually realize what it means. Especially at this age, and especially when I was 18, 20, we all feel we are going to live forever, we have all the time in the world, blah, blah. But the thing is, you only get to live once, so you might as well do what you want. Of course, you need to figure out how to pay your bills. You can't be a starving. There are no patrons and kings and queens around to fund you.
Oh, I wish they were.
I know. Every creative person wishes that. Figure out practically a way to pay your bills, but don't let go of your dreams. And you don't have to have one dream in life. Yani, in the sense that if I could do something else, like if I were good at singing, I would try that next. Does not need to be only a writer, but I'm not a great singer, so I won't be trying for something like that. So, and there's something that Neil Gaiman, the author, used to say, throwing dandelions to the winds. It's just about throwing your dandelions, trying as many things as you can. You don't know which dandelion seed will sprout. So if it sprouts, it comes back to you. And trust me, it may, ऐसा कोई time limit नहीं होता कि इतने time में, you will get a return for what you're doing. But eventually it does over a period of 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. And in my case, after 10 years, because I was just telling Svani, I left being an editor for Tinkle 2 years ago. I became an editor 12 years ago. So 10 years of editing. Now, even now, I'm getting letters from children who were children then, but who are now working with Twitter or Google, telling me about, how they used to read my editorials and how they liked it. So I'm so zapped because बच्चे बड़े हो गए. I'm like, I don't feel so old anymore, but this feels good to read. So I'm saying कि try stuff.
Also, what I really found what you liked was you said that you yourself were so confused at that time,
Yeah.
and kids were reading what you were writing and
Yeah.
saying, "Oh, this is so inspiring." So
Yeah.
you guys may feel confused, but honestly, you're inspiring to someone else. So just
Yeah.
do what you want to do.
We tend to do this now. We tend to think that elders know everything. They all, okay, teenagers don't feel that. But generally, when we're kids, we do feel that. But I think, again, Gaiman used to say this, that adults are basically children in adult clothes. Because I don't think there's ever a stage in life where you are, I know everything. You don't know anything. Most people just are very good at masking and pretending. So if you're a really good pretender, you've got it made. You're adulted. Okay. One more thing I would like to say, something I would like to tell myself is, and this is something that goes for all of y'all, when y'all pass out, when y'all go outside, y'all will start making professional connections. So what has happened is social media, Facebook, Insta, Twitter. It's made things very casual. Hey, what's up? That's the way it goes. But that is okay for social media. That's okay for friends. It's okay for making connections. But if you're in the professional sphere, वो बचपन में नहीं होता था letter writing we used to have in school. Please, that's the only template to follow. Don't create a LinkedIn connection and say, hey, I just wanted to know what you've been doing lately. Because that comes off sounding very flippant. You need to sound serious, then you will be taken seriously. Because for everything said and done, the corporate world is corporate. The business world is serious. So you want to be taken seriously, people are willing to give their time to you, give you advice. But treat them with respect. Treat their time with respect. So just if you could remember that would be really nice. So I think that's about, want to add in with this?
So about this, I actually have a slightly odd take in the sense that definitely be professional and be polite, because if you're sending me a script and I have to forward it to a colleague, it's just that much easier for me if I know, A, you're going to be easy to work with, you know how to navigate a professional sphere, and B, if you insult me, I'm not going to help you, so I think that's quite obvious. Also, the creative industry is slightly odd networking wise, in the sense that in most fields you can do a course and then after you're done with the course you have placements and you have an interview and you get placed. Here, especially in screenwriting, you can do a course and it gives you a lot of connections, but it's not a guarantee that you will get a job writing for TV or you will get a film made. So what happens is it's very important to network up and network with people who are senior to you, and it's extremely important to network within your crowd, within your peers. What's happened with me is, for example, there are lots of, if you just search for hashtag screenwriting on Twitter, you'll find screenwriting groups, you'll find screenwriting contests, you'll find things like Screencraft and Studio Binder, which give you lists of all of these things. And there are contests which, if you pay a very nominal fee, they'll even rank you and give you feedback on your script. And what happens is, these contests are supposed to be to find an agent to represent you. But what winds up happening is you make such a strong group of friends who are all in the same place, all looking for agenting, all looking for work, and they will support you, because very often one of these people will wind up as a staff writer or as a producer on a show or as an assistant director somewhere, and they will remember you when they're looking for writers. So this is really how a lot of networking happens. My own Netflix job I found on Twitter. And it was an amazing job with Netflix Los Angeles, but this stuff is online now. And what's great about the internet is, now sitting in India, you can apply internationally. There is a little bit of gatekeeping as to what sort of content you can do, but the world is your oyster now. You can seriously go online and get in touch with anybody you want. Having said that, a couple of things to be careful of is, after a point you start realizing what feedback resonates with you and what doesn't. You will be giving feedback to others, they'll be giving you feedback. It's a lot of your time which is absolutely unpaid for, but you're helping a community. And don't lose your ideas. If you have a fantastic idea, don't just, there's so much of sharing now on social media that I don't want some fantastic idea that you have to be stolen by someone who's just seen it online. So just be a little careful when you're doing these two things.
I don't know whether you covered this, but try to be genuine, because, for example, when we network, that word has become very artificial, kind of matlabi. But honestly, maybe abhi samajh mein nahi aata hai, but once you start working, if you have any common sense, most people figure out what you're doing. So the give and take, it is a give and take. Networking is a give and take. And like Svani said, with your peers, when you are actually giving and taking, they tend to remember it. Especially if you're the kind, who just circulates, they say na party mein circulate karke aate hain.
Yeah.
They will remember that too. So don't forget that, because when we are teenagers in college, whoever we are, mostly we end up being that kind of adult when we are in the professional sphere as well.
So genuinely networking would be things like, say, if you want to be a book author, you read peers, you read other people's books who are also starting authors or debut authors or who just found agents, you leave reviews, you promote their stuff. It's not just about promoting yourself all the time. You have to look at promoting the whole community, because then they will promote you and these are your readers. So I think that's really important. And also I think something everyone loves to hear about is how to pitch. So say you have a great idea, you've written a good book, you've written a great script, you've polished it, you've edited it. Now how do you get to tell someone this is this exciting, awesome idea I have, and how will they listen to you? So I really think the great thing about pitching is the way to learn is just fun. Go on IMDb, look at trailers, look at the way they write their pitches, and just see what works. Read these things aloud, because when you're pitching, you'll be pitching in person, and it needs to sound fun. And it just helps you become a better writer because you start writing also more exciting sentences. I remember what happened to me once was I had just started in my career and we were creating a show for Star. And I very enthusiastically read out 20 pages of what I thought was amazing story. And I was done, and the head writer was like, I mean, the story is really nice, but Svani, padna seekho. Like, learn how to read and learn how to pitch. So, networks will assume that if you cannot pitch, you cannot write. So it's a sad state of affairs, but you do need to do that. And I would really highly recommend masterclass.com. It has incredible free articles and free resources on learning these sort of things. If you're writing a book, there are lots of Twitter pitch contests where you can make friends as well as learn how to really concisely sell your book.
We wanted to ask, are we at the 30-minute mark?
I have no idea.
Yeah, is anyone keeping time? Because we'd like to keep time for audience questions as well, if any.
It's 25 minutes so far.
Okay, so if y'all have questions, please ask. If y'all don't have questions, we'll ask each other. No problem.
Ma'am, how you came up with the word tinkle?
So Tinkle was not me. I don't know if y'all know the history. It was Uncle Pai, Anand Pai, who started the magazine with his associate editor called Subba Rao. So I believe they were at a meeting to discuss the name, and Subba Rao got a call. And the association of the word tinkle is diverse depending on which culture you're from. So in the US, tinkling means something else. But in Subba Rao's case, he said, I'll give a tinkle back, which he meant a phone call back. So that's when they thought this sounds like a very child-friendly name.
Okay, I'm sorry, actually my sister was very big fan of Tinkle, not me.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Hello.
Hi.
My question is, as a writer, आपकी डिक्शनरी शब्दकोश इट इज़ वेरी इम्पॉर्टेंट क्योंकि बहुत ज़्यादा हर ऑडियंस के लिए अलग शब्दकोश होता है. तो व्हाट इज़ योर इंस्पिरेशन इन बुक और नॉवेल?
Like the sort of so I write what I would like to read. So basically that's the language I use, and that's it's actually an interesting question because I also write slightly for an international market. So there you have to change your language slightly because if I say chalo, an American may not understand. Or I have to code it effectively so that I'll say, chalo, come on, let's go. So, they kind of understand, or in context, you understand. So, those are the sort of decisions you make. And when you're writing for kids, Rajani would know better actually.
Actually, when you're writing for kids, what I mentioned earlier, that you don't want to be that teacher in class trying to sound really high and mighty. You go simple. Conversational is the best part in storytelling. And depending on the kind of story you're writing, like if it's an action adventure or if it's fantasy or horror, that way your vocabulary might change. But generally, we don't try to put all those big words that we all end up learning. Not a great thing
honestly,
to do.
we don't do this for adults either. Nobody wants to read really long, complicated words.
Yeah.
So.
Anyone else?
So I have a cousin who's like 17 years younger to me, and sometimes she asks me a lot of stories, like she wants me to tell her stories. I don't know how to tell her everyday stories. So like, how do you get that? How do you cater to a younger audience like that?
Okay.
So 17 years younger than you, you're
Yeah,
saying,
she's
right?
7 right now.
Oh wow! Oh, that's actually a great age. So there's tons of stuff you can do. I think kids that age love funny stories, especially. They love a little bit of magic. They love friendship stories. There are books which are called lower middle grade books, which cater specifically to like 7 to 9. So that's something also that they might really enjoy.
She wants me to tell the stories. So like me as a kid, I used to enjoy a different set of stories, and now that in this context, her likings are way different from mine. So I can't connect that to my childhood anymore.
You know what you can do? The best part of storytelling is observation. You're curious and you observe. So, for example, in your cousin's case, her everyday life will have some kind of adventure or the other. You know, things that you would tell, "Arey, pata hai usne kya kiya?" That kind of thing. So you take off from there. So, for example, with my niece, what I used to do was take a simple everyday thingy, like she would not eat her food or something like that. I'd add a bit of fantasy to it. Food nahi khaya, to some jadugar came and she'll come for her. What will she do to get out of it? So they at that age, their imaginations are quite wild. So you just need to get the story started and tell her to participate. You all will spin an adventure. Anyone?
Someone.
When do you realize कि हमने जो लिखा है वो complete हो गया? Now it's edited completely and it's ready to come out.
Okay, so we have very different processes here where I can edit endlessly until someone just tells me, please stop, and just, you're killing yourself now. But I think when I can't do it anymore. Like I edited my novel like 12 times. I rewrote it twice. So it is a bit of a process. And do you want to add? I mean, honestly, I don't think I'm a good person to answer.
This is a very funny answer because I'm an editor. So the thing is, I'm not someone who goes on editing my work. But technically speaking, your work is never complete. Your work is never perfect. It can always get better. But honestly, chasing perfection is not a great idea either.
Yeah.
You get to a space where you feel happy that you have achieved partway, at least 70-80% of what you want it to be, and then leave it. And unlike Svani, I don't go on editing. Because I believe two things happen, because this is something I realized when I was editing. You develop a blind spot. Very obvious mistakes start escaping you. And secondly, I started getting fed up of my own writing.
Yeah.
So I'm like, itna nahi padna hai mujhe.
Also, Neil Gaiman also said that, when he sends his manuscript to his agent or editor, he says, I know that a novel is basically a very long piece of prose with something really wrong with it. So if it's good enough for Neil Gaiman, it's good enough for us. So. Any other questions? Someone's here.
Hello, ma'am. So my question is that as a writer, people always tend to get saturated at some point when they think कि अब इससे आगे तो हम क्या ही लिखे. Now something is getting repeated. अगर 10 स्टोरी लिख ली, 11वीं लिखने गए तो ऐसा लगेगा ये तो फर्स्ट से मैच है. एंड नॉट जस्ट अस बट जो सामने ऑडियंस है वो भी बहुत जल्दी कंपेयर कर लेते, ये तो ऐसी स्टोरीज थी या ये तो इसमें भी था. तो हाउ टू गेट ओवर दैट सैचुरेशन पॉइंट कि वापस क्रिएटिविटी हम कैसे लाए या कुछ नया स्टोरीज को बिल्ड करें.
That's never happened to me. And I've been writing for 18-19 years now. The trouble is usually I have too many ideas and I've not been able to get the time to execute them. But you're right in some way that certain tropes, for example, you might end up repeating. So I think as far as you're aware of it, that's okay. Because you don't want to give your audience the same thing over and over again. Even if it's a trope you like for example, for me, socio-political fantasies, I'm very passionate about, simply because I like to think about the world and I want to figure out answers to my questions, which I do through my writing. But I can't keep doing the same thing in the same way. Then I figure out another way to approach it. That's the novelty factor for both you and your audience.
And I think every writer has certain themes that they keep returning to, but the execution is so wildly different. So, for example, like the fish out of the water, someone who's not comfortable in their situation can be Mulla Bhai, can be Lakshya. There's so many different ways of taking one theme, and the films don't look like each other in the end. Any other questions?
I have one question about artificial intelligence, as you know, that ChatGPT, DALL-E, Midjourney, these all are growing. So how it will affect this kind of jobs, like where we think, we reflect on our ideas and our experiences, and every day, like whatever information we are feeding to AI, it is learning and it is becoming more powerful and powerful. So what do you think that what makes us different from AI or something, like how we are going to compete in future?
I think that's an excellent question. Thank you. I have a lot of reservations about the ethics of the way AI is right now, but I do feel that if it can become a tool for writers, I think it's ridiculous to say that some jobs will not be lost. Some jobs will be lost, but I also think that if you can differentiate yourself in the sense that if you write, nothing is ever truly original, but I don't think the way Rajani writes, I have seen it before. So maybe an AI might be able to imitate Hemingway or might be able to imitate Arundhati Roy, but it can't write like Rajani yet. So you have to find your own voice and the own story that only you can tell. So, which is why a lot of people are saying that writers at the top of their game or artists at the top of their game will not be affected. But things like content writing and writing copy and all, I think those things will see a bit of an upheaval with AI.
So what I want to add to this is we don't realize at some level this has been happening for a very long time. Like we are noticing it because it is with writers and artists right now. Think about it, embroidery, any kind of carving work, many of these things are being done by machines. So this is one step up from that. So those jobs also went away. The entire industrial revolution happened because of that, because labor went in favor of machines. Which is where the ethics happen, because why is AI used? Partly to help people to write better. Even people who may be mediocre, they may end up sounding really nice. Second part of it is saving costs, because P&Ls are all about saving costs, right? So for me, it is what do you call it? One of the things that bugs me a lot. One of the things that I write a lot about, because I'm very socialist in that nature. So it's all about revolution, because it will come to a point where you can't give all the jobs to machines, right? Humans exist, we have to live, we have to buy your products. So we need to have a living as well. So it's a very contentious issue. You can have arguments both sides, but ideally, as much as possible, like Svani said, it is going to happen. You can't stop it. You know that deepfakes have also been happening for a long time. So it is going to happen. It's a matter of how much are we as consumers going to take it till it starts hitting us back.
Also, I honestly don't know as a writer why I would want AI to write my book for me, because the writing is the joy of it. So if you just want to be known as a writer, please use AI. If you actually want to write, you're going to
There
write.
are plenty of those writers as well.
Exactly. So it's fine. Like whatever works for you. So it's really not my core competency as well, but we do use voice artists for animation. So what you could probably do is reach out to voice talent agencies or reach out to executive producers on different shows and send them your samples. That would be the next step forward for you.
Thank you.
Also, I would imagine, considering that you all have so much access to Insta, YouTube, everything, no? Create your own channel,
Please do it.
start doing it, people start noticing, maybe you'll become an influencer and they'll approach you.
Like, ma'am, it's like I do only a little part. I have a channel, but it's for poetry.
So you need to, so with anything, like being an influencer is not a joke. It's a lot of hard work. It means consistent content put out on a weekly, daily basis, building your fan base. So most people think, influencer ban gaya zindagi. वैसे नहीं होता. You have to think about your content, you have to relate to your audience, and you have to give content that clicks with them. So once you have that, I'm not saying everyone can crack it. But once you figure out what is unique to you, what is a voice that they're looking for, I would imagine this would go the same way.
And you've got so many lovely courses at Karnavati. If you maybe team up with someone from the animation team or team up with someone from like art or something, you could maybe make a product together and that would showcase both your talents.
That's such a brilliant idea.
Thank you, ma'am.
Over here.
Hello. So the question that I have is, both of you at some point in your discussion mentioned copyright, right? So I'm a law student and I relate it to intellectual property. What is it in animation?
it's not an animation, it's basically advertising. So you write it's called content copy. You write the jingle, or you write the slogan, or you write the content that goes for ads.
You know the Lay's ka thing, no one can have just one? That is copy.
That is copy.
So for example, it's the hook that you figure out. You don't want a lamba sentence. Aap ek bar khaoge to bar bar khaoge. That is also a copy. But something bada you don't want. You want something small that people will remember. Like we remember even the 80s ads. Dip dip dip. Add sugar. There was a jingle that went in. So that. International property rights are very relevant in animation, comics, everywhere. Simply because I don't know whether you all know what are IPs. Basically, it is any kind of brand. Like for example, Disney, for example, it may have Mickey Mouse. It started as an animation. You can go ahead and they have done it all. You can make a movie, live action movie out of it. You can have merchandise out of it. You can have books out of it. So these are all revenue models. So for a company, for an individual, especially when the IP takes off, it makes a lot of sense because you earn money. But people also think कि सब कुछ IP बिकेगा, नहीं बिकता. You also have to convince people that this is something that is doable.
Someone's here. Yeah.
Yeah, someone will tell us about time,
We
right?
have no idea.
So this is kind of similar to like the chat GPT question. Like currently there's a live stream going on Twitch where the people are using like a slightly older model of chat GPT to live animate, and like it's like similar to an old sitcom that used to air. So it's like they're live animating and the AI is writing the show and everything. Granted, the animation does look like it's running on it's like a old game from overheated PS2, but still. So if you got the chance and you wrote a pretty good story, would you use an AI to like animate it or like draw it fully for you?
I'm not sure I would. I mean, it's just a philosophical thing. I really strongly believe it's not ethical right now what's happening, and I don't want to use it. Once the ethics are sorted out, I don't have a problem with using AI as a tool.
Yeah, I guess, if we had not thought about the ethical angle, meaning that while getting a machine to do the work that you would have been paying an artist to draw and animate for you, if you had not thought about it, you would have thought ki haan maza aayega, I have a story, let's animate it and see it. But because you know the ethical angle, because if you don't stand for the artist today, tomorrow it will be your turn. So I think everyone has to take a stance. It's not something right or wrong. You just have to figure out whether it works for you or not. Some people will say ki nahi, mera paisa bachta hai, it's fine for me. So it depends on the larger scope of things, how people accept it. Like I said, till it comes knocking on your door, everyone will be fine with it.
Yes, Aman?
Can you talk a little bit about your creative process? Do you have fixed times? Do you get up in the morning and do it? Is it whenever you want to do it?
Okay. So I'm a very, very structured kind of creative person. I'm a non-creative person in that sense. I believe a lot in discipline. And I had read this really nice book by Suhail Sethi or someone from NDTV who used to do book reviews. It had a lot of authors who had given their process. And the one that struck with me was, it is not about what time of the day you do it. It is just the fact that you keep a time to do it. So it is not, you can't keep waiting for inspiration to come knocking on your door. It doesn't happen. Very rarely you might have that nightmare and you wake up and say, "Arey, this is a good story, let me write it." But if you're going to make a living out of it or you want to write consistently, I believe you need to set a time. How it worked for me, and I'm a little anal retentive that way. I used to keep 20-minute timers. So on every day you don't feel like writing. So you keep a 20-minute timer. So, you don't feel, it's not too much of a burden. You think only 20 minutes. And in 20 minutes, if you catch the flow, you're going to snooze that timer and you will write further. But at least you will write for 20 minutes. And I tend to, earlier, there's pantsing and plotting. So pantsing is, what do you feel like you write the story? I did that the first time, the first draft of my book. And it was quite horrible. So I went back to the drawing table. I created an outline of how I wanted the story to move. Because the basic idea was good, but I didn't feel that the plot was moving the story along. So created an outline structure. So use that as a skeleton to write your story. So that gives you the liberty, because within the outline there's a lot of freedom you have.
Yeah.
So that is my process, simply because I am inclined that way. Others may have different processes.
My process is also very hard on discipline, in the sense that if you can't wake up one morning and say, oh, I have a deadline tomorrow, but I don't feel like writing today. That's not possible. You will not be hired again. So I also try to write every day. Even if I don't feel like writing, I try to push through. I also outline very extensively. I think about what I'm going to write before I write it. And also, I'm a very big believer in reading a lot of things around your writing. So say it's not like if I'm writing a script, I'm working 10 hours on that script. I'll maybe work 3 or 4 hours on that script. And the rest of the time, I might read poetry, I might read something in science, I might just read outside what it is that you're doing, because you never know when something helps you in your script. So often we've discussed ideas and, we'll be like, oh, this is this article I read 3 years ago. So I consider all of this part of the writing process, where it all comes together to make a richer story. And I'm a big believer in stepping back after you've written something.
Yeah.
Write something, step back, let other people look at it, don't look at it for a while, and then when you come back, you're reading it as a fresh reader.
Can I ask a story? Writer's block is something which happens.
Yeah.
For some it is frequent, for some it is infrequent. 2 parts. How often do you get into a tizzy over your writer's block? And how do you get over it? And for animation, means these are ones who are writing long and novels, and either next to a brook or a hill or a very nice place where they think that's where they get inspired. Whatever way we think, there is an inspiration for every creative person. Tell your story.
Writer's block is pretty common, simply because if you're consistently going to write something, you just hit a wall. Like any other job, I believe, even if you're doing any corporate work as well. If you're a creative person, you learn to push through it. There's no point stopping what you're writing. It may be nonsensical what you're writing, but you still push through it. Honestly, there is every writer's dream is to have a view and a brook. I don't know any writer who has that. All of us sit in our desks with maybe one tree outside to look at and one bird. That's about it. So the main thing with writer's block is what Svani said, discipline. You consistently do it. Later on, if you want to throw it out, you can throw it out. But I have found that even what you think is nonsensical during your writer's block is actually pretty good. You just need to tweak it a bit.
Yeah. I also feel like writer's block normally stems from something that you're either scared of writing or that you know is not working. So once you kind of tackle those things, or you're just, you have too many edits to do and now you start feeling blocked, for me it's more of that. If I'm just in the mood, I don't normally feel writer's block.
Or like that question that was there about, if you end up writing the same thing over and over again. So especially with endings, most people have the problem, a story ending. So what you learn to do is throw out the first ending, second ending, third ending, fourth ending, fifth ending out of the window. Go with something that is
ridiculous. You write something and your writer's block will be done.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am.